Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations around money. I'm your host, Lauren, a 4-time Olympian and certified financial planner. On this show, my guests share their money stories. Everyone has a unique story and experiences both wins and losses when it comes to money. My intent is to give listeners something they can relate to, something that builds their courage to be open and take control of their own money story. When I'm not creating a great show for my listeners, I'm running my company, Worth Winning, where I help individuals and families organize their finances. Check us out at worth-winning.com. All right, now on with the show. If your money is funny, but it's no laughing matter, make sure you check out worth-winning.com to get help organizing your finances. Today's guest is Jonathan Weislow. Jonathan is a former University of Miami baseball player who knew pro ball wasn't the path he was going to take, so he decided to get a master's degree in clinical psychology. However, life took him in a different direction, and he is now the director of operations at Amicon Management and was recently named to the list of 30 under 30 by the University of Miami Alumni Association. Translation, that means he is going places, people. Jonathan shares with us how he is able to save 60% of his income and how a really big part of that is the importance of being patient with your finances. Let's listen as Jonathan shares his money memoir with us. All right, get ready, everybody. Today, I have John Weislow on the podcast to share his money memoir. All right, John. Let's kick it off with just telling people a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and just the basics of your background. And then it could lead us to what was your first memory of money?
Sure. So my name is John Weislow. I am 30 years old. I'm the director of operations for Amicon Management. We're owners' representatives for developers, landowners, condominium associations, homeowners, home builders. And as an owner's rep, what we do is basically, to make this easy, you want to build something, you're not quite sure how to do it, or you know how to do it, but you know it's going to be too complicated and too much time for you to handle it yourself. You basically give us the keys to the car and we take you home. So we'll build your architectural team, we'll build your engineering team, we'll find your general contractor, we build your budget, we build your schedule, and manage the whole process. And then when we're all done, we got something beautiful to look at, whether it's a home, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a mixed-use building, whether it's the new 5-story parking garage that's going in Miami Beach. It's going to have the Micro Target as the anchor tenant, which I would love for everybody to visit when it's open in July. That's what we do.
So take us back a little bit, though. That's what you do now, and we're excited to know about that. But who is John the person? Where did you come from? Where did you grow up?
Sure. Those are all great questions because honestly, I don't even know how I got in the position I'm in right now. This is going to be a deep dive, a good experience for me. So I was born and raised in Reston, Virginia, only child. My parents are a little bit older than usual. My dad was 50 when I was born. So I grew up with older parents. I was an athlete my whole life, played baseball, was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to the University of Miami where I was consistently mediocre. I could tell you that I didn't go pro because I got injured my senior year, but if I had gone pro, I wouldn't have been pro for very long. I wasn't that great. I didn't love the game enough, so I kind of always knew I was going to have to have a plan B. Problem is, I didn't really know what that plan B was going to be. I just knew it was going to be something else. My senior year, I was sitting in the training room. I think I had fractured my back at the time. My L4 and L5 had hairline fractures. And we had a sports psychologist at the time who was the closest to a mentor that I had. Basically like, what you do is not athletics, because I know I can't do that anymore. It looks like it's pretty entertaining. How do I be you? And so he sort of took me under his wing and mapped out a plan for me to become a sports psychologist. He's, look, you got to get your master's in clinical psychology. I had like zero internship experience in undergrad because I've been playing baseball all the time. Underqualified for that typical student who goes into a master's in psych. And then you get your PhD and get licensed. And then people can call you doctor. And then you're a sports psychologist. So I ended up getting into UM's master's in mental health counseling program. I think I got a 36 on my first test, which was eye-opening for me. I got really good grades in undergrad, all things considered, being an athlete. I think I had a 3.4 when I finished undergrad. And that was with playing sports. And then so I was like, man, all I'm going to be doing is school. Grad school is going to be a cakewalk. And then I did my normal thing of just pulling an all-nighter in the library before my first test, and I got 36. And then I remember my teacher pulled me aside and was like, you might want to consider a different program, which to me was just motivation, right? Because I'm naturally competitive. So long story short, I ended up coming out of the program with a 3.9. So I figured that out. And I also came out and realized I wanted to do nothing in psychology anymore professionally. I took a year. I started working as a clinical research assistant for this program in genetics, actually at UM, called Genetics, Exercise, and Research. And it was, you're doing genetic data gathering on a morbidly obese population, which is a glorified title for essentially a personal trainer just taking people through an exercise routine. As I was trying to get into a PhD program, I looked at epidemiology, sports psychology, but since I was so far down the road of getting an advanced degree or a doctorate in the psychology field, I just felt like the natural next step was to finish it.
Tell us a little bit about how you ended up going from a master's in clinical psychology to ending up in construction work.
So I was kind of serendipitous. I was at a point where I realized I was not going to have a career in psychology. And then simultaneously, there were these kids at my gym who wanted to do a road trip to the CrossFit Games. I don't know if you know what CrossFit is. I didn't even know they had a games at the time, but this is about 7 years ago. They wanted to do a road trip for the CrossFit Games, and I was like, hey, cool. That sounds like fun. And they're like, yeah, we should stop off at 10 gyms across the country, and we should work out there. And it sounded like a really fun idea, but it also sounded like it was going to cost a lot of money. So the idea was to team up with a charity and get the trip sponsored and then also raise money for a good cause. So long story short, we put together workout events that required registrations to participate in. We raised about $50,000 for this charity, and we went across the country to California and the CrossFit Games and back, and it was amazing. And the founder and head of that charity was the CEO of Amicon, Adam Opsick. And so he was like, you're going to have to come work for me. I saw an opportunity there and haven't looked back since. So I started essentially as his do bitch and just carried around a bunch of notebooks and took meeting minutes on words that I didn't understand and thought that I would just be really good at it because I had some advanced degrees and I was dealing with plumbers and electricians, which I had no respect for those career paths at the time. And now I have tremendous respect for those career paths. And yeah, just haven't looked back. So it's played out pretty well. Probably the best decision I've made in my life.
I mean, it sounds amazing. And it speaks to this idea that you're not pigeonholed by choosing this or that as a major. The sky's the limit with the possibilities that are available to people.
I think you just nailed it. It's that you're never pigeonholed, right? So I think sometimes people feel like they're too far down the rabbit hole to get out and find a different trajectory, right? It's never too late. You just have to be able to recognize opportunities and take advantage of them. But you got to be open-minded. So fortunately, I was at a point when I was open-minded and was able to recognize the opportunity, and it's played out. So I think that's good advice for anybody else who might find themselves in a similar position.
So wait, let's go back a little bit. So how was this all paid for? So you were recruited to the University of Miami, you walked on?
Yeah, so I mean, look, baseball, I was recruited to UM. I did get a scholarship. It was a pretty good scholarship at that. But baseball at the time got 11.7 scholarships for the entire team, which is usually a roster of 30 plus kids, right? So it wasn't a full scholarship. In University of Miami at the time, it was like 60 grand. So you figure I'm taking out a pretty good amount of student loans every year, but 15 grand a year in loans.
Okay. And so then you also said that the master's degree. So was that while you were still on scholarship, or was that post you used up all your eligibility and now that's full-fledged on you?
Yeah, that was full-fledged on me. Like, parents are broke, so just did the normal thing most people did at the time and got out more student loans. So
yeah, let's pause right there and talk a little bit about what that process looks like for people. You said your family didn't have a lot of money, but tell us more about your parents. Was there talking in the household about you going to college or you being able to afford college? Was there any kind of money conversation, or were you having to figure this out on your own as an only child?
Look, I'll tell you what, my parents are pretty good at a lot of things and pretty smart, at least they were earlier. But most of what I learned about finance and fiscal responsibility, I learned from watching my parents do what you shouldn't do. So my parents were like, yeah, just take out loans and don't worry about it. It won't be a problem later and you'll figure it out. And there was never really a plan to pay them back at all. So I just took out close to $200,000 worth of loans. Finance was not something that my parents focused on.
Gotcha. And so when graduating from school, what were you thinking as it pertains to student loans? I know for a lot of people, it's okay, I'm going to go out and I got these loans, but surely someone's going to hire me because I got these 2 degrees. I'll just go find a job making $200K and I'll pay this back in no time. Or what was your money mindset? I guess maybe during college and then immediately right after college when the student loans kicked in and the payments and all of that.
Yeah, so during college, it's like, listen, I'm going to play baseball for a while, so I'm not going to have to worry about it. And then in grad school, I'll have an advanced degree or 2 advanced degrees, so people are just going to pay me more because I have some initials after my name. That was a school of thought, which is not true to anyone who's listening. I think my first job, I think I made less than $40K out of grad school, right? It was the first time you're making money, but then you realize how far it doesn't go. And with student loans, you get a 1-year deferment program. So you're not paying back in those loans for the first year, so you don't really feel the hit. And then once I figured out that I wasn't going to pursue a PhD or any sort of supplemental advanced degree, I was fortunate enough to get tied up with the CEO of my current company. And he got me a job in construction, which, long story short, pays much better. So, paid better then and pays much better now. If you do pretty well in it, there's a lot of opportunities. But yeah, I would say I've figured out from just not really having a safety net for my parents. I think both my parents filed for bankruptcy. My mother's in an assisted living facility and has Parkinson's. I didn't have a safety net. So kind of like everything else I've done in my life, I just have to figure it out. Right.
Mm-hmm. And so when you got this first job, because you didn't have your parents to kind of guide you in organizing your finances or figuring things out, and they didn't have any financial support to give you, when you met your current employer and you left your previous employer, what was that process like? So you realized $40K wasn't enough, but did you go to this next guy and say, hey, I'm glad I'm making more money, but I need to know what to do with it, or I need to know how to better organize myself? And with $200K in student loans, how are you figuring all these things out?
To me, it's an Excel spreadsheet, right? So it's what you got coming in and what you got to put out to live. And then there's supplemental expenses on top of that, right? Entertainment, more food than you probably need to eat. Listen, I had a girlfriend forever and now I've got my wife. Fortunately, she's not too demanding and she's pretty accepting of everything. So I didn't have to spend more than I had to impress her, which is great. It was a simple math equation, right? And part of that equation is your monthly student loan expense. So I realized early on, first of all, you don't have that much leverage negotiating with an employer year one with an entry-level position. So you try the whole dual degree smart guy out of former athlete negotiating tactic with a guy who's more seasoned than you give him credit. And that doesn't go very far. So you end up at the same salary that he had offered you going in, right? And then I realized, which I think everyone should realize, really the only way to make more money, and this is just my experience, so it was my experience that the only way to make more money was by producing more and being really good at your job. So for me, it's the more you can take on and the more you can do very well with less people helping you, the more valuable you are to a company. That's our mindset as a company now. And I really don't think there's philosophically a way around it. When it comes to investments and things like that, it's a little bit different, right? You can get some returns on your investment that are exponential, but that's a different thing. But if we're talking about just jobs and salary, you just got to be really good at what you do. And the only way to be really good at what you do is to work really hard and learn the craft and be excellent at it. So that's just been my philosophy. And fortunately, I've been able to pay off a good amount of my student debt and manage it very well. But it's still a monthly payment I got.
You mentioned having a wife. And so could you maybe talk a little bit about this idea of meshing 2 financial lives together and how you guys decided to talk about that? Because I think for a lot of people, it's really hard. You're dating someone, everything is separate, then you get a little bit serious, and then we want to be together. Was there some like conversations about the finances before the marriage? Did she almost faint when you told her that you had 200K in student debt? How did you guys have discussions that were productive about building a relationship and in addition, your finances together?
Yeah, I mean, look, to this day, I still firmly believe that she loves me for more than just the amount of money that I throw in front of her, right? So I like to think that I have more to offer than that. So I think at the root of our relationship, I'm really funny and a genuine nice person to hang around and made her feel good about herself. So I think she valued that more than the student debt, right? So when it came up, it was kind of like, okay, we'll figure it out. I love you and I want to spend my life with you, so we'll figure it out together. It really wasn't a thing. Now, I think my situation is probably unique from others. That may be more of an issue in their dynamics. And I'm fortunate just because my wife's really cool.
So who's in charge of managing things on a month-to-month basis right now? Are you more in charge? She's more in charge? Or you guys sit down every month and do a little budget meeting? How are you guys divvying up the responsibilities financially?
That's a good question. And we're probably unique, but I mean, I think everyone's unique, right? Maybe there's a norm, maybe there's not. I mean, I manage most of it, if not all of it. I mean, we just built a house and I paid for most of it and just kind of said, hey, I need you to maybe pick up this furniture item since I just came out of pocket for most of our house. And then when it comes to the monthly, we split the mortgage, probably more in my favor. I pay the lion's share of the mortgage, but it's a pretty fair distribution. And then we split the bills. I think she actually takes on probably more of the Verizon, Comcast, FPL, water. It's a pretty fair divvy up of those. I think we set an arrangement as to who pays what very early on, and we just followed that as we've scaled up and scaled up. For a lot of things, we've got split bank accounts. I think just because we haven't gone through the effort of merging things. So I'll buy something and be like, hey, or she'll buy something and I'll be like, hey, I'll Venmo you, or I'll buy something and she'll Venmo me. It's a very laid back scenario. And I don't know if that's normal or not, but that's what we have.
What's normal is what's your normal. So everyone's situation is unique.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your financial entourage now. How are you organizing things and thinking of accountants and financial planners and those sorts of things? Are you guys managing things on your own, or have you hired people to help you with that?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a guy who manages most of my stuff. Actually, Mike Monica, Pine Valley Investments. I'll give him the plug right now. One of my close friends, actually out of New Jersey. He manages most of my stuff with investments, and I've been fortunate enough to do pretty well on that. When it comes to just real financial planning, we sit down, we wanted to buy a house. I wanted to buy a house more so than she did and wanted to renovate it. And so we stockpiled cash for a while, lived in a 1-bedroom apartment for up until last year, actually lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with my wife, and we split rent there. So expenses were pretty low. And then we were fortunate enough to purchase a home November of last year and just finished the renovation about a month ago and paid for all of it. We did a 20% down payment on the house and then paid for the renovations in cash. And we were able to do that because we had done a really good job of saving.
Okay, that's a great place to pause and talk about saving strategies. So what kind of strategies did you guys use for building a nest egg? Because that sounds like a pretty significant amount. You saved the 20%, which is standard for a home purchase. But in addition to that, you had the money available to be able to do the renovations, like you said, to pay cash for those. So what strategies did you use in making sure that you were able to save that money? Yeah,
I mean, for me, it was really just make as much money as possible as was feasible. I took on a lot of side hustles, right? I mean, can we use the term side hustle? I think that's really important. So I've looked at a lot of different avenues of making money. So I've been fortunate to invest in some things that have paid back pretty well for some ancillary income, done a couple side deals with friends that have paid back pretty well, and just saved that cash rather than going and splurging. I mean, I drive a Jeep Grand Cherokee. I've always had a pretty modest car. I just don't splurge on anything. I never really felt the need to. I think that's more of just a lifestyle rather than an outlined financial plan. But I think that by having a goal in the back of your mind, you just know that you're saving because at some point you're going to spend it for a large purchase. And for us, it was a house and a renovation.
So when thinking about your regular income, was there a set percentage that was going into the house fund? And then 100% of every side hustle you got was going also into the house fund, or was it different than that?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can call it house fund or just general savings. I had set out to save about 60% of my paychecks from day one, regardless of how much money I made. And that becomes easier with the more money that you make. But I generally try and keep my expenses low and save as much as possible. And there's no percentage to it. But if we're going to put one, I would say it was about 60%.
This is amazing. We have to pause here for a second because so frequently people are living paycheck to paycheck and they're not being able to come up with a way to save at all. And kind of as a baseline, what we recommend is to be putting away at least 10% and then to be working toward 20% as a more average sort of savings goal. But you're telling us that you are saving 60% of your income.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I was fortunate in the sense that I've always had a girlfriend or now my wife. So we were always had one person's expenses with two incomes, right? So that definitely helps. We're living in a 1-bedroom apartment. So that's less overhead than 2-bedroom apartment and split between two people. So that always helps. And I always drove a modest car, never had to drive too far for work. Don't really go out a ton and don't travel too much. I lived a pretty modest life. My wife doesn't splurge on much. And maybe I'm oversimplifying the process.
No, I don't think you're oversimplifying at all. If that's the process that you use and that's the process that works for you, it is what it is. I think it's wonderful. The two things that are standing out to me are, one, that you have a lot of patience. So 8 years at a 1-bedroom apartment, I think a lot of people get antsy. It's like, I'm a grown up, I deserve a house, or I don't care if I have to rent one, or I'm sick of living like I'm in college, et cetera, et cetera. And it sounds like you're very set on not wondering or worrying about what other people think, but really sticking to your goals. And you set that 60% goal well within your means. And I think that it's a testament, something that could be inspirational for other people. If someone's listening right now and they can't find a way to save and they're trying to get to their first 5% or 10%, just like how do people do this? You're living proof that you can live off of 40% of your income and save 60% of it. And I love what you said too about this idea of as you made more money, you still stuck to the same percentage. So no matter what the dollar amount was, it was 60% of that was saved. And of course, when you made more money, it's like, woo, this takes a little bit of stress off my back, but it's still 60% of whatever you're making that's being put away and 40% that you're living off of. So I love that.
Yeah, I mean, to be specific, so in the side hustles, I'm just remembering now what I did when I was younger. I mean, I think I had a couple clients, personal training as a former athlete. You look the part and you generally know more than the general population about physical exercise and fitness and kinesiology and stuff, if you paid attention and were any good. I was fortunate. I had some clients that I had trained for years that provided me good supplemental income. And I think that helped as well. So I neglected to mention that, but it certainly helped in the savings. You mentioned patience, and I think that's important. I can't think of one thing I bought 5 or 6 years ago that I still have or care about, besides like my cat, right?
Cats are important. What's the cat's name?
The cat's name is Lulu, and we don't need to do a deep dive into the rationale for the name. I think it's probably a different discussion.
Okay, shout out to Lulu.
Yeah, shout out to Lulu. Used to have a twin brother, Dexter, but RIP. So material things to me, like making emotional decisions, and certainly emotional purchases, are something I try and stay away from personally and professionally. It never end up well in the long term. So yeah, I think patience is super important. I think this is really important too. I mean, I made an investment about 4 years ago that was, in retrospect, probably the dumbest financial move I could have ever made. And I was fortunate enough to get every penny back and learn from it. I actually wouldn't trade the experience. I actually bought a gym, which will remain nameless, with some partners who will remain nameless, and did not do thorough due diligence on the deal. It looks great on paper. I didn't realize that, if you see a P&L on paper, it's not necessarily the truth, and sort of made a trusting decision that it would be managed correctly, basically that everything that was on paper checked out. And I lost every penny, which at the time was every penny I had. It was a 6-figure cash investment. And I was the only person who went in on the deal with my own cash. Everyone else took out a loan because I didn't trust the deal as much as I did and I had more experience. So I took a huge risk, fell flat on my face, and then went and found a strategy to get myself out of it and make it back through sweat in a different deal. But if I learned anything through that experience, it's to do your due diligence in any sort of investment and not to jump at something that looks too good to be true or promises a return that appears to be too easy. So I think I'm probably a little more trigger shy now and making investments. I'm more risk averse than I used to be, but it's taught me a lot of different life skills.
Let's talk a little bit more about that due diligence aspect. What things would you do differently now in looking at an investment before choosing? You said this one looked good on paper, but it didn't end up actually being good on paper. So what are the things you should be looking for to catch those red flags before you hand over the money and, gone too far?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think to me, I had a couple of rules, right? So you got to know your people that you're going into business with. You got to know them. You got to trust them like family. Okay. And if you don't know them, you don't trust them like family, you have to do your due diligence on the people first and make sure they check out. There's a lot of responsibility to one another, and you have to be able to have honest, transparent conversations. If it's a business, if you're investing in a business and that has to be managed, you have to hire an exceptional manager or manage it yourself or have somebody that you trust who you would hope would be exceptional manage it. Because the success of that business is not coming from the guys who are putting their cash in. It's coming from the guy who's there every single day, making sure the operations work. And then it's got to be close enough to where you can touch it. If you can't access it and you can't see it every day, you don't have full visibility into what's going on. And if you don't have access, you can't possibly have all the information, which you need to know the status of it. So it starts with people, then it goes to management, and then it goes to proximity. And then I would also add to that, before doing any deal, I would always invest the money in a forensic accountant to dive in and just make sure that whatever you're looking at checks out.
I like it. I think you shared a lot of words of wisdom with us today. All right, let's head into our final sprint. So these are some rapid fire questions, which require some rapid fire answers. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Worst advice you've ever received?
Think about it.
Best advice you've ever received?
Network.
Best thing about going to the U?
I got to backtrack on my last answer. I got to say my wife or she's going to kill me. So probably my wife is the best thing about going to the U. Other than that, network. What's the next question?
The next question was most meaningful gift you've ever received. Who was it from and why was it meaningful?
Man. I'll tell you what, I actually got a gift from, this is recent. I got a gift. It was a bottle of scotch with my name engraved on it from a president of a local construction company saying congratulations for my 30 under 30 award that I received from the University of Miami. And that was meaningful because it showed me that my work was appreciated by other people in the industry and from other people that I respected and looked up to. So that was big.
That's pretty dope. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. You have $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
Dinner.
Food. Most people say food. 90% say food.
Yeah, food. And that answer is probably never going to change. It might have been lunch if we did this earlier.
Might have been more specific kind of food, right? All right. Last but not least, what is one thing you would like to improve about your finances in the upcoming year?
I'd like to make some really strategic long-term investments, whether in real estate or in some sort of franchise or something. I'd like to make a really solid investment.
Awesome. So what's the action item to being able to really make sure that you accomplish that?
Vet every deal that's presented to me and to actually spend the time looking into it. There's a lot of stuff that I'll sort of put my flag for follow-up, or I'll just take a cursory look at and get too busy to follow up on. But really, I guess finding more time in my weekly routine to actually vet the deals.
Awesome.
Yeah.
John, it has been so wonderful having you on the show. Thank you for all your wisdom, your expertise, and really for sharing your money memoir. I'm sure there's someone on the other end who can relate to some of the things you said. And now it's time for you to shout yourself out. Tell us where we can find you, how we can support you in your endeavors, and anything else you want us to know about you.
Again, I'm Jonathan Weislow. You can find me at Amicon Management. We lead, organize, and manage all aspects of our clients' real estate and construction projects. So it's our goal to maximize your value, minimize your risk, and we protect your interests.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show, John.
You got it. Thanks, Lauren.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Jonathan's money memoir. I was pumped to hear that even though he's still paying on student loans, he isn't letting that stopping him from saving. Don't get so focused on debt paydown that you forget to put something aside for yourself. Our word of the day today, patience. The definition is the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. Jonathan and his wife lived in a one-bedroom apartment for 7 years while saving up money. He is building the financial future he wants through patience. So many people lose their patience and want instant gratification that they end up setting themselves back further. A little patience goes a long way in your finances. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you found this episode worth listening to. If you have financial questions, suggestions for guests, or would like to share your money memoir, please contact us through our website, worth-listening.com.